The day Thomas discovered Rachel's betrayal started like any other Tuesday, quiet, forgettable, almost peaceful. The sun was just beginning to stretch itself across the rooftops, and the air still had that cool, sleepy bite to it. Thomas was making scrambled eggs, while Jamie, their 14-year-old son, dragged himself into the kitchen like a zombie, still wrapped in a cocoon of early morning grogginess. "Forgot your lunch again," Thomas said with a half-smile, placing a brown paper bag next to Jamie's backpack. "Sorry," Jamie mumbled, rubbing his eyes. Rachel was already gone. She had kissed Thomas goodbye with lips that barely touched his cheek and said she was heading to yoga class. She'd been more into fitness lately. New yoga mats, new sports bras, new perfume that didn't quite smell like her. It had been bothering Thomas for weeks, not enough to raise alarms, but enough to leave scratches on his gut. After Jamie left, Thomas sat down with his coffee. The house felt too quiet. He should have started the laundry. He should have cleaned the garage. Instead, a whisper from somewhere deep nudged him to go out. Just get in the car. 10 minutes later, he was pulling into the school parking lot to drop off Jamie's lunch. Something about seeing Jamie eat cafeteria food made Thomas feel like a bad father. He had taken the day off. No harm in being the hero dad for once. He wasn't expecting to see Rachel's car. It was unmistakable, a red Toyota Prius with a dent on the right bumper from the Christmas parking lot incident. Thomas slowed to a crawl, stared for a second, then parked across the lot, angled just right so she wouldn't see him. She said, "Yoga." Maybe she had forgotten Jamie had something at school. Maybe she was dropping off something. Maybe she had just the door to the school swung open. Rachel stepped out, laughing. And beside her, walking far too close, was Brian Tuck, Jamie's gym teacher. Fit, tall, tan, one of those guys who looked like he was still living in the glory of high school athletics. He was wearing a hoodie and sweatpants, and he had a gym bag slung over one shoulder. His arm found Rachel's waist casually, like it belonged there. She didn't flinch, she leaned in. They looked at each other like they'd just shared something, intimate. Thomas gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. A strange sound escaped his throat, part laugh, part cough, part scream swallowed whole. He didn't get out of the car. He watched them walk away together, talking, brushing shoulders, disappearing behind the far wing of the school building. Then he turned the ignition, backed out of the lot, and drove home in absolute silence. The lunch bag was still on the passenger seat, back in the house. Everything was just as he left it. The smell of eggs still lingered in the air. Morning news buzzed low on the TV. He sat down at the kitchen table and stared at nothing. He wanted to break something. The plate, the glass, the illusion. But he didn't. Instead, he made himself another coffee, added too much sugar, burned his tongue, still didn't care. When Jamie came home from school later that afternoon, Thomas was back in the role of dad like nothing had happened. He helped with homework, listened to him talk about a dodgeball game, nodded at all the right places. Rachel came home later than usual. "Oh, yoga ran a little long," she said, brushing past Thomas like she was just another breeze in the hallway. She smelled like that new perfume again. He said nothing. He watched her, the way she avoided eye contact, the way she texted while pretending to fold laundry, the way she smiled too quickly at things that weren't funny. That night, Thomas laid next to her in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the click-clack of her thumbs on the phone screen. She tilted her head slightly, toward the glowing rectangle, smiling faintly, biting her bottom lip, probably texting him. He closed his eyes, not to sleep, just to shut the world out. Clouds hung low like bruises. In the sky, Jamie was up earlier than usual, brushing his hair in the mirror, humming some rap song under his breath. Thomas watched him for a moment, his boy, taller now, voice cracking here and there, still innocent, still unprepared for the cruelty adults could wear behind smiles. Thomas knelt down in front of him as Jamie pulled on his school uniform. "Let me fix that collar," he said softly. Jamie rolled his eyes, but let him fuss over it, just like when he was little. Then Thomas paused. He looked his son in the eye. "Really? Looked son," he said gently. "There's gonna come a time in your life when things won't make sense. People you trust, might hurt you. The world might feel upside down, But it's all right. Just go with the flow. Asterisk, Jamie blinked. Oh, he gave his dad that awkward teen look. Like, what are you even talking about? Thomas just smiled. He wasn't speaking to Jamie. Not really, he was speaking to himself. To the boy he used to be. Asterisk, to the man who thought love was simple. That marriages were safe. That a yoga mat meant downward dog and not someone else's husband. The days that followed were strange. Asterisk, Rachel kept pretending. Thomas kept playing along. Asterisk, he started noticing the smallest things, the sudden shower before dinner, the calls taken in the garage, the smell of spearmint gum that she never used to chew. It all stacked up like puzzle pieces falling into place. Asterisk, but still, Thomas said nothing. Asterisk, he watched. He waited. Not for proof, he already had that. Asterisk, he was waiting to figure out who he was going to become in this story. The angry husband, the avenger, the broken shell. No, he wanted to be something else. Asterisk, he wanted to be the father Jamie would one day remember, not the day after a fight, not the man who shattered things in rage, but the calm in the middle of a storm, a quiet lighthouse. One night, as Rachel showered, Thomas scrolled through old photos on his phone, pictures of their wedding, of Jamie in diapers, Christmas mornings, beach trips, 1,000 moments that felt like they belonged to someone else now. Asterisk, then he stopped on a photo of Jamie 7 years old, missing his 2 front teeth, holding a toy sword, grinning like a conqueror. Asterisk, that's why I'm still here, Thomas thought. For him, because the one thing Rachel couldn't destroy was the bond between father and son. That was sacred, untouchable. Even in the face of betrayal, even when everything else was crumbling. 3 weeks had passed since Thomas first saw Rachel with Coach Brian. Asterisk, in that time, not once had she confessed or even hinted at the truth. She kept up the lie like it was just part of her skincare routine. Morning yoga, evening wine, occasional hollow kisses. She laughed at the dinner table. She asked Thomas how his day was, even though her eyes were always somewhere else, on her phone, in her head. With him, asterisk, Thomas noticed everything, and yet he never said a word. Asterisk, some might call it cowardice, others denial. Asterisk, but Thomas knew what he was doing. He wasn't staying silent because he was afraid. He was choosing silence because sometimes saying nothing is louder than any scream. Asterisk, he watched Jamie thrive in those weeks. His son came home with better grades, won a small art competition, and even made the school soccer team. Thomas was there for every milestone, cheering from the sidelines, making hot chocolate when Jamie needed to stay up and study, his focus now being solid, consistent, present. Something Jamie could lean on when the world decided to fall apart. Asterisk, but underneath it all, a storm brewed quietly in his chest. Asterisk, every night when he laid in bed beside Rachel, pretending not to notice her texting until 1 a.m., Thomas had to hold himself together. Some nights, he walked out to the garage just to breathe, just to remind himself that pain didn't have to become violence, that disappointment didn't have to turn into destruction. He could leave, he would leave. Asterisk, but not without telling his story. It was a Sunday morning when he finally broke the silence. Asterisk, Jamie was upstairs, his laughter drifting faintly through the hallway as he played his usual online game with friends. The sun was peeking through the blinds, making soft golden lines across the living room floor. Rachel was on the couch, scrolling through her phone with a cup of coffee balanced in her hand. Asterisk, Thomas walked in quietly, holding his own mug. He didn't sit. He stood by the window, staring at the backyard fence he had built with his own hands. 8 summers ago, asterisk, you remember that fence? He asked. Asterisk, Rachel looked up, startled. Asterisk, the fence. Took me 2 days to build. You thought I'd give up halfway. Asterisk, she chuckled nervously. Yeah, well, you were never good with tools. Asterisk, Thomas finally turned toward her. His eyes, calm but heavy, met hers. I saw you, he said simply. Rachel froze. Asterisk, he didn't need to say more. Her mouth parted slightly, but no words came out. Asterisk, I saw you with Brian, outside Jamie's school 3 weeks ago. The color drained from her face. Thomas took a sip of coffee. I sat in the parking lot, watched him put his hand on your waist, watched you laugh like teenagers in the hallway, Watched you walk off together like the world owed you that moment. Asterisk Rachel set her coffee down too fast. The cup rattled. On the glass table, asterisk Thomas I. Asterisk, I don't need an explanation, he said, cutting her off, gently but firmly. I don't want to hear excuses or stories about how it just happened. I've seen enough to know what this is. Asterisk tears began to fill her eyes. The first real emotion she had shown in weeks. He kept going. I didn't say anything because I needed time to think. About Jamie, about what kind of father I want to be, what kind of man I want to be. Asterisk Rachel shook her head. It was a mistake. Asterisk no, Thomas interrupted, voice calm but final. A mistake is something you regret. You planned this, repeated it, hid it, lived it. You chose this, again and again. The room fell into a long silence. Rachel tried to hold eye contact, but she couldn't. She wiped at her face, but the tears just kept coming. Asterisk Thomas sat down across from her, letting his shoulders relax for the first time in weeks. Asterisk, I'm not staying for you, he said quietly, and I'm not even staying for me anymore. I'm staying until Jamie's strong enough to understand, until he can look at the world and know his father stood tall when it would have been easier to fall apart. Asterisk Rachel whispered, I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Asterisk, but you did, Thomas replied, and the worst part is you were willing to keep hurting us, just to keep your secret safe. Asterisk he got up, walked to the hallway, and returned with a small duffel bag. It had been packed for days. Just the essentials, some clothes, a notebook, his old photos. Asterisk, I'm staying with Eric for a while, he said, referring to his longtime friend who had a basement apartment. We already talked. Asterisk Rachel stood up, panic rising in her voice. What are we going to tell Jamie? Thomas paused. That we're taking a break. That we love him, and that it's not his fault, because none of this should ever touch him. Not if we can help it. She nodded slowly, shame thick in her throat. Thomas walked upstairs to Jamie's room. He knocked gently, then opened the door. Asterisk Jamie looked up from his game, headset still on. Yeah, Dad. Thomas sat on the edge of the bed. Pause that a second, bud. I need to tell you something. Asterisk Jamie hesitated, sensing the seriousness in his father's voice. He slid the headset off. Thomas took a deep breath. I'm going to be staying with Uncle Eric for a while. Just a few weeks, maybe more. Your mom and I, we're figuring some things out. Asterisk Jamie's face twisted. Are you guys fighting? Asterisk no, Thomas said honestly. Not fighting, just learning how to handle something difficult. Asterisk Jamie looked away. Asterisk Thomas touched his shoulder. Listen to me. None of this is your fault. You're the best thing in my life, and I'm not going anywhere. I'll still see you every day. We'll still do movie nights, soccer practice, all of it. Asterisk Jamie didn't speak for a moment. Then quietly he asked, Are you mad? Asterisk Thomas smiled gently. I was, but I realized something. He looked his son dead in the eye. Sometimes in life, people hurt you, even people you love. And the pain, it's real. But how you choose to respond, that defines you. He took a breath and said the words he had rehearsed in his heart for weeks. My son, it's all right. Just go with the flow. Asterisk Jamie furrowed his brow. I don't get it. Asterisk you will, Thomas whispered. Someday you will. 2 months later, Thomas had settled into a new rhythm. He and Jamie spent weekends together, rode bikes, cooked pasta badly, and made up stupid games. Rachel apologized again, but Thomas never went back. Some cracks can't be resealed, one evening. Jamie came home from school, frustrated and teary-eyed. His best friend had turned on him over something petty, a betrayal, a stupid rumor. Listened, then gently handed him a warm mug of cocoa. Asterisk, I told you once, remember? He said softly. People you trust will hurt you, but you can't control them. You can only control your flow. Asterisk Jamie looked at him with understanding. This time, asterisk, I think I get it now. Asterisk Thomas smiled. That's all I ever wanted.